Hello, hello. I'm Kads, and welcome to today's video. It's that time again. One of my favorite parts of the game. We have another challenge tournament. Starting tomorrow, it's going to be a dragon tournament featuring champions from the Nyresan Union. Now, these tournaments usually last for 2 days, 48 hours, and they typically offer a void shard at 2100 points on the rewards on the right. However, it could also be some sort of soul essence or some sort of chicken sometimes, which can be unfortunate, but it can also be a great source of Relentless gear. Now, the timing of this tournament is good and bad. It's bad because it's during the Rat King fusion, so people are already kind of using a lot of their energy for Fire Knight and champion trading going on right now, chasing the rares to get that fusion done. But that's what also makes it a good thing, is that a lot of other people might be distracted by the fusion, thus giving you the chance to sneak in and get some Relentless gear for yourself. So for those of you who are not familiar with the Nyresan Union, if we hop over to the index, Nyresan Union is one of the 4 families in the game that comprise all of the factions, and specifically for this tournament it is the Dwarves, the Shadowkin, and the Sylvan Watchers. So this particular one might be kind of tricky as well because these 3 factions are the most recent in the game, and as such, a lot of you might not have any champions or very few champions from these factions specifically, which can definitely make this tough. But if you have a couple lying around, even farming a lower stage, you can actually make this work better than you might think. So this is the team that I'm going to be using here. I have Lady Kimmy in the lead, and she provides some good buffs and debuffs: increase speed, increase accuracy, turn meter fill, decrease speed, decrease accuracy, turn meter decrease. I have Brogni in here who can provide increased attack and block debuffs with a good shield, so he powers up my nukers, as well as protects them from the dragon's debuffs. I have Herndig in here, who is my primary DPS for the waves, and debuffer as well. I have Ninja in here, who is the boss killer with the HP burn activation. And I tossed in Genbo here, who's just one of my arena nukers, and he's there to just help clear the waves. So I'm going to run this for you guys just so you can see it in action, and it takes about 90 seconds. So I do plan to run stage 20 as I'm showing here. Stage 24, I could probably make a team to run it, but it has Lurias and Spirit Hosts, which are just very, very annoying if you get the 3% resist, and you could actually wipe if they get a block revive off on one of your crucial champions. So I just find it very, very tedious to do stage 24, so I'm not going to bother. Stage 20, it's cheaper, and it offers you the best points per energy spent anyways, so you get a lot more economy. So we made pretty quick work of the first wave. Herndig is really good because he does reset himself. There's Genbo slapping it down, and we're at the boss in about 35 seconds. So this is where the wave nukers kind of fall off, and then we switch over to Ninja as the primary source of DPS. It's worth noting, for those who don't know, you cannot place decreased speed on any of the dragons in the game, and so including the Dungeon and Doom Tower dragons. You also cannot decrease his turn meter. So I'm not really worried about his secret skill here. There's plenty of DPS just from Herndig and Genbo, as well as Ninja activating the HP burns. So nothing really takes a turn. The dragon barely gets a turn, and the waves barely get a turn. I don't think the waves took a turn at all. So he might hit us once. There we go. And then after that, we have a little bit of brimstone, and once Ninja goes again, it should be done and dusted. Oh, nope, he doesn't have Hellburn yet. A little bit longer. But yeah, so this team takes me about 90 seconds to run this on stage 20. Oh, 128, there we go, new PR. But takes about 90 seconds to run, and it's pretty quick and pretty clean. Now, trying to offer you guys a budget solution for this is kind of tricky, because you could argue that my team is fairly budget already, because I am using 2 previous fusion champions in Herndig and Brogni, as well as the free champion that was given to us being Ninja, and an epic arena nuker being Genbo. Lady Kimmy is not essential on my team, and she could be swapped out for something to offer me more protection, but considering, as you saw, that the waves don't really take a turn, I figured I could just go faster and get it done a little bit quicker. In addition to that, as you can see here, if we focus on the factions that are relevant, I don't really have many more options built out just to show you guys. Specifically, I don't have any Sylvan Watchers built out, so it really, for me, it's just Shadowkin and Dwarves. But I don't really have much more to show other than, like, Taragi could be good for protection, but we're going to talk about substitutions later in the video. All that being said, I do have a big recommendation for you guys, that if stage 20 is proving too difficult, feel free to drop down to stage 16. Stage 16 is void, so you're not going to have any negative affinity matchups. It's much, much easier, and you still have a chance to get 6-star gear. So I'm going to quickly run this tandem here just to show you how painless the stage is to do. I don't even need a full team, and I could have probably run it entirely with Herndig by himself, but Ninja just helps speed up the dragon portion. So don't feel bad about dropping down to stage 16 just to get it done. And if you have a really easy group, you run it 4 or 5 times, and if everyone else is at 0, that's all you need to do, and you're out of there. So the stat requirements for this are a lot lower than stage 20, and it's not going to be the worst thing in the world. So even Herndig himself can down the dragon's ability there, and look at that, 32 seconds speed run, and that's only using 2 champions. So even if you don't have these 2 champions, of course, and you have a full team that's comprised of some 60s and some 50s that it just fit the challenges, the challenge required, you can definitely still get it done, and you'll get a mix of 4 to 6 star gear. So before we get to the substitutions, I'll quickly show you the gear I have on my champions. I have Ninja here in a Relentless and Perception set. He has 44,000 HP, 3.6k attack, 211 speed, full crit rate, 235 crit damage, and 320 accuracy. I use him in a lot of areas. He's one of my best boss killers in the game, and I just built him with enough accuracy to handle most Doom Tower bosses. And Relentless just helps him take more turns to get back around to the HP burn activation sooner. I have my Herndig here, who's in Double Cruel and Perception. He's primarily built for Dark Fae, so his HP is purposefully low, around 32k, nearly 5k attack, or nearly 4,900 attack, 2k defense, not too important. Wanted to keep that low as well, because he does need to kill his mirror version. 248, so very, very fast, slightly slower than the Dark Fae on stage 120, but he has the mastery where if he kills a target, he gets 6 speed per kill, up to 18. So all he has to do is kill one enemy in the wave, which is guaranteed, and he'll go first and kill the mirror copies. Full crit rate, 223 crit damage, and 367 on the accuracy. Again, he does need the accuracy to turn meter decrease the Dark Fae, so that's why it's so high. And the attack and crit damage would be higher, but I had to push for speed and accuracy as well. Next we have my Brogni here, who's in a mix of gear, Immortal, Speed, and Perception. He's speed tuned for my Demon Lord Clan Boss team, and he has a healthy chunk of HP, good amount of defense, 255 speed, full crit rate, a little bit of crit damage, 438 resistance, and less accuracy than I'd like. But this was a very tough build to put together because I was focusing HP defense and speed and full crit rate and some crit damage and resistance, and so I kind of just gave up on trying to get the accuracy too, because that's just a hard build to pull off. Maybe one day. Lady Kimmy, we've seen a couple of times in my more recent videos, but I have her in double speed Perception. And she's a support, so healthy amount of HP, healthy amount of defense, 310 on the speed, and 415 on the accuracy. Ideally, this would be closer to 500, so she's still a work in progress, depending on if I get a stronger banner with more speed. And lastly, we have Genbo here, one of my arena nukers. He's in Cruel and Speed. Don't quite yet have a Savage set for him, but standard nuker, 5k attack, 225 on the speed, so he's a little bit faster than your average nuker, but I want him on my faster team, and he's speed tuned with my Madame Saris. He's not full crit rate, because on his A3 here, he does give himself the crit rate bonus before taking an extra turn, so I don't need him at full crit rate, and 84 just kind of fell out of the build. 265 on the crit damage, and we don't really care about accuracy or resistance. So similar to the last video on this, for the substitutions, we are going to talk about the viable legendaries as well as epics and applicable rares, because free to play does not mean you'll never have any legendaries. So if you do have them, great, and you might be able to use them in your teams, and if you don't, then just look at the epics or the rares. I don't think there's any rares that I recommend in this case, but just look at the epics if you don't have the legendaries that we're going to talk about. So kicking things off, we start with the Dwarves. Obviously, we have to talk about Trunda, if you're lucky enough to have her, one of the best AoE nukers in the game, so she can literally single-handedly blow up the waves, particularly on stage 20, if she's built well enough, so a good AoE nuker there. Worth mentioning Goffred Brassclad, if you do have him, he has a 100% chance on a 3-turn cooldown to AoE stun, so that could be your CC champion, and he can also protect an ally from dying because he'll block the fatal hit, but kind of like a Nyri, well, he'll put block damage before the hit hits, and he will stun the champion who tried to kill your champion. Nari the Lucky, who is a previous fusion or fragment champion who I don't have, but he can attack all enemies here in place of provoke with a counterattack, so it works well with his A1 where he can steal buffs. But more often than not, he's going to go first and keep the waves controlled the whole time. So you have a provoke in case you want to protect your other champions from being hit. Molly Tankard, in a similar vein, she has the AoE provoke here. She is negative affinity for stage 20, but she will definitely work on lower stages. And this is nice because this provoke just is a place. So she's affinity friendly in that regard, and she doesn't have to actually attack them. So she can just place provoke and be your CC champion, as well as having a single target revive on a 4-turn cooldown, and the ally comes back with block damage. So they usually shouldn't fall over again. And she also has this really cool passive where whenever she's hit, she will fill the turn meters of all of your allies by 15 or 25%. After that, we have Kira the Watcher. Again, negative affinity for stage 20, but honorable mention in the fact that she does offer ally protection for all allies and increased defense, so she can be just a tank if your champions are falling over. And whenever an ally is attacked under the ally protection, she places a decreased attack on the attacker. So again, another reason to tank, or another reason she can be a tank and protect your team. Worth mentioning Tormin, who also has another provoke, and he's void affinity, so he's affinity friendly. But I would say primarily for the A1 as well. AoE A1 is always a candidate for a stun set. So if you have an arena Tormin that you've been using in a stun set, he can slot right in. He can provoke on this skill on a 4-turn cooldown, or you can just set him to spam the A1 as many times and just land some stuns with the stun set. And of course, the holy grail of enemy max HP. Most of you probably won't have her. I definitely do not. But enemy max HP on every skill, so she can basically kill the boss on her own with a couple of hits, especially on stage 20 where enemy max HP is not capped. For the epics, I'll start with Grizzled Jarl, who has heal reduction on the A1, not really that useful, but he does offer increased defense and block debuffs, again, which can protect a little bit of the debuffs that the dragon will place once you get to him, and he does have an AoE decrease attack, so you can take less damage from the Hordens and such in the waves. Cornelia is a good option. She has a sleep, which isn't super effective in dungeons because you're gonna hit the enemy waves and they're gonna wake up. But there is a 50% chance the sleep becomes a fear. So if she's built on your arena teams or something as your CC champion, she can just slot in there, and you have a 50-50 shot to have them fear, which has a 50-50 shot to have them miss their turns. Next, we have Rearguard Sergeant. Positive affinity for stage 20, decreased defense on the A1, AoE decreased attack, only 75% chance, but still decent enough, and she can heal herself by 25% of the damage inflicted. But this is the money ability here where she provides eye protection, similar to Kira, the Watcher, and continuous heal, so she can protect your team, keep them alive, and heal them up. I do wish that she had the continuous heal on herself as well, because she is taking so much damage, but that's just the way her kit is. I'm not a huge fan of Geomancer. I don't like to use him. I don't use him at all. But technically, he could be useful. You can't drain Dragon's turn meters, as I mentioned earlier, but if you do place the HP burn and the Dragon hits you, you can take advantage of his passive and deflect some damage and some Giant Slayer procs. However, the Dragon probably won't take that many turns, so I don't think he's the best option. But if you just need someone to be some form of DPS on the Dragon, he can definitely do some work. Next to him, we have Rockbreaker, who's similar to Molly in that he can just place provoke. He doesn't have to hit. He is negative affinity, and he does provide counterattack for himself, where he can increase his defense every time this ability is used, so he could just be a super tank. And he does have a passive where he has a 50-50 chance of decreasing the damage he takes by 50%. So another reason he can just be a super tanky champion. If you have him, run him at 50, just have him CC the waves and just take some damage while the rest of your champions kill the waves. Next to him, we have Melga Steelgirdle, negative affinity again for stage 20, but she does have a nice A1 where she can remove 50% chance to remove a debuff from a random ally. Takes a ton of books, unfortunately, but she can still do the work unbooked for sure. You have here continuous heal and a shield based off her max HP, and then you have a 2 ally revive with 20% HP, which is very low, and 20% turn meter, but she does provide them a shield that's 30% of their max HP, so effectively they are half HP. Next to Melga, we do have Fodbor the Bard, who's negative affinity for stage 20, but he could be used on lower stages, and he does have decreased defense, albeit on a 4-turn cooldown, but he can suffice for the purposes of this challenge. After that, we get into the Voids, where I will mention that Runeskeeper Dazdurk is a very, very solid champion for this. He has Leech on the A1, so you can heal up a little bit for your damage dealers. He has the Gorgrab / Arbiter type ability where you have increased attack and a turn meter fill by 25%. And this is the big money ability where you have a full cleanse and you're going to heal all allies by 25% of his max HP. So you build him with a lot of HP and that can be a massive heal. And then he also places a continuous heal on all allies if a debuff is removed. So when the dragon puts the poisons and the weakens and such on you, you cleanse it all off, you have continuous heals, and you get a massive heal based off his max HP. And lastly, we have Demitha. She's not exactly the ideal champion for this. However, if you're running her in one of your clan boss teams or your demon lord team, she can definitely do some work here by decreasing or increasing the duration of all ally buffs and decreasing the duration of debuffs if there are any on you. And this can turn into a pretty massive heal when it scales with a ton of debuffs being decreased. And of course, the money ability here, or block damage, we could just take no damage and you get continuous heals. So she can just help your team stay alive and keep running. Next, we have the Shadowkin faction. A couple of honorable mentions here as well. If you have Mishinaki, he can be your Hex champion here. He places Hex and he's also a buff stripper. Here he can be your debuffer as well. He places decreased defense, decreased attack, very strong, and a HP burn on the A1. However, that synergizes nicely with his passive here where if he's attacking, or when your allies are attacking an enemy under Hex, he has a 50-50 shot to join in and run in and slap him with an HP burn, or just if he's built for damage, just run in and smack him as well. So he can do a lot of damage for sure. Harima, fairly new, so a lot of you probably won't have her as well, but if you're one of the lucky few that have pulled her, she is another example of a provoke champion on a 3-turn cooldown, so she can help control the waves. Yoshi, the first Shadowkin, if a little bit of trivia there if you guys didn't know, but he was a fragment summon champion from the past, and he does have increased accuracy and increased attack, but he can also place True Fear on the enemy, so he can be a little bit form of CC if you guys have him lying around in your vaults. And for the dragon portion, he can place decreased accuracy and HP burn on the dragon and do a little bit more damage and reduce the accuracy so you might not take the poisons and the weakens, etc. Kyoku can be nice. She is negative affinity. However, with this ability here, most of the time she's just going to be chilling under block damage, so she's not going to take any damage while ally protecting for the rest of your team, so keeping them alive. And she also provides decreased attack, and she can place HP burn if decreased attack is already out there, or if for some reason the decreased attack gets resisted. Weaken on the A1 as well. If you're fortunate enough to have Riho Bone Spear, one of the best healer cleansers in the game. So massive heal here, full cleanse, block debuffs for 2 turns, and she heals all allies by 30% of their max HP, but a further 5% for each debuff removed from them. So that can equate to a massive heal if there are a ton of debuffs on the target. And she places every debuff under the sun on a target, so this is great. This is all you need on the dragon. Including decreased crit rate, because most PvE bosses have 15% crit rate. So if that lands on him, then he cannot crit any of your team, which is nice. But and yeah, obviously you can't stun bosses. So every debuff under the sun you could ever need to put on the dragon. And the last honorable mention here would be Yumiko, if you're lucky enough to have her too. She's not really necessary, but she can reset your ability skills if you wanted to do a super fast speedrun type thing. And if you put Hex on the boss, she can deflect all of his debuffs back to him instead of it going on your allies. So that can be handy if you have her. For the epics, we're going to start with Turagi the Frog, one of the best, I would say, like, not affordable, but budget-friendly champions that can help you with this dungeon. On 3-turn cooldown, he places a shield and ally protection on all allies, and then he heals himself by 25% of his max HP. And the heal is increased for every poison debuff on the enemy team, which works well with his passive because when he's hit, he can place poisons on the attacker, and that does occur once per hit. So if it's a 3-time hitter, that means he has 3 chances to place a poison. A somewhat lesser known part of his kit, since he's primarily a Demon Lord clan boss champion, is that the A2 here has a 50-50 chance of placing a provoke. However, increases by 5% for each debuff on the enemy team. So not on the enemy champion, on the entire team. So if you have a handful of debuffs across the enemy team, he can get closer or up to 100% chance to provoke. And he's a CC champion as well as a protection champion. Really good Turagi the Frog. In a similar vein, you have Hitatsu next to him. Leech on the A1, 50,000 books on that one. And he can also place AoE decreased attack, but it's only 75% chance to land. But his money ability here, increased defense and continuous heal on all allies for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown. So he can be a protection champion and healing champion. Negorio was a fragment epic champion from earlier this year, and I've heard he has pretty decent multipliers, so he can be one of your AoE damage dealers with this ability here on the A3, and if he's under increased attack, it resets or decreases the cooldown of the skill by 1 turn. He gives himself increased attack if he's low HP, but honestly, if he's that low on the HP, he's probably dead. So you might not be able to take advantage of that, but if you combine him with an increased attack champion instead, then you can decrease the cooldown of this skill, turning it into a 3-turn cooldown instead of 4. Moving on, we have Sachi here. She's quite popular in Faction Wars because of this AoE A1, which is always a candidate for a stun set, and she also has a 50-50 chance to place decreased accuracy, which can be pretty useful. But she is also useful for this ability here, like the Gore Grab / Arbiter ability, where you can place increased attack and turn meter fill. This one is an attack, and it attacks 1 enemy, and you just have to crit in order to get the turn meter fill for all allies. So keep that in mind. Now, Burn Giri is more well known for him being able to solo Bommel up to stage hard 50, but on the A2, he does have a 60% chance AoE just to place a stun, so he could be a CC champion, and he's positive affinity for stage 20. He also has a provoke on the A1, which is a 40% chance on a single target, but it can be decent. And he also provides a shield and strengthen for your allies. So a little bit of protection, a little bit of CC. Also should mention Kanagashi, who's also pretty popular for Faction Wars because she is the only true reviver in the faction, with a reviving a dead ally on a 4-turn cooldown, 50% HP, 50% turn meter. She also does have this single target ally attack ability that boosts your turn meter of all allies, and a little bit of turn meter control on the A1. That's not going to work on the dragon, of course, but it might work on the waves. And last for the Shadowkin, the honorable mention of Taya. She's one of the Doom Tower epics, so I suspect that most of you probably will not have her by the time you're looking to do this tournament. But she can instantly activate poisons on the target, so a single target poison explosion, and she places those poisons with her A2 here, 3 times 100% chance for 1 poison per hit. And lastly, we have the Sylvan Watchers, the newest faction in the game. A lot of you won't have any of these champions, or very few, but there are still some ones worth mentioning if you are one of the lucky ones to have pulled one. Elva Autumnborn, of course. We have a full team cleanse here with block debuffs and increased speed, and a single target revive. Next to her, we have King Galkabar, who does a buff strip and replaces them with poison. So if the enemy has buffs, they become poisons, and he places block buffs afterward. But the more important ability here is the full cleanse here, and he places continuous heal for each debuff removed. So when the dragon goes and he places weaken and 2 poisons, if he cleanses that off, you get 3 continuous heals on each ally, in addition to him placing a shield that's 25% of his max HP. So lots of protection. For the epics, the only ones worth mentioning are Mr. Rider Dahi, who's one of my favorite from the new faction, and he can be your debuffer. So increase attack, increase accuracy on himself, but he grants an extra turn, which goes right into the A2, where he can place decreased defense on all enemies, and he grants an extra turn again if he places it on all enemies, and then that would take him straight into the A1, where he just has a 20% chance to also get an extra turn. So very, very fun champion, and I'm excited to use him when the faction crypt opens. And of course, we have Myceliac Priest Ornn, who got nerfed prior to entering the game, but he's still pretty decent if you want to try one of those solo strategies for stage 25, 24. Probably not 24, because again, you have the Lurias and the Spirit Hosts, so they're going to cleanse and he might not survive. But he can be a dragon solo champion, or just a support champion to poison the waves as your other champions do work. Alright, so that's going to do it for this video on the Nyresan Dragon Tournament. So hopefully this has been helpful and you have some idea of what teams you could possibly use, and let me know what you're going to use in the comment section down below. Hopefully you do get an easy group, and if the group is easy, I do again recommend dropping down to stage 16 if you can't do stage 20, throwing in a couple of champions that fit the requirements, and just getting a few points enough to get some Relentless gear. Or if you really want to push hard, you can still go for the potential Void Shard if that is the reward. If you found this video helpful, be sure to subscribe to the channel because I do love these types of challenge tournaments, so I'll always be creating videos to help you guys figure out teams for them. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.